Welcome everybody to this morning's PES Network webinar on public employment services trends in 2025. So we're looking back in particular at some work that's been done recently to look at trends in 2025, and we're going to have an hour and a half now ahead of us to dig into this. So this event is the latest mutual learning event of the European Network of Public Employment Services. My name is Ed Thorpe. My role will be to moderate this morning's session, to try and keep us on time, to make sure that we get through all of the content that we want to cover in an hour and a half. But without further ado, for a more official welcome, I'm delighted Isabelle Rest has joined us from the PES Network Secretariat, the European Commission DG Employment. So Isabelle, please, can you give us some opening words for this morning's webinar? Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Good morning. And on behalf of the PES Network Secretariat, I warmly welcome you to this webinar. We are delighted to see so many colleagues and from PES and partners joining today. For those of you who are less familiar with the PES Network, it was created in 2014. It brings together the public employment services of the 27 EU member states, as well as Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. Our aim is to strengthen cooperation between public employment services to improve the services they deliver to their customers. We have a pretty busy work program with over 40 activities a year, and I invite you to look at our Knowledge Center if you want to find out more. Regarding our topic today, the 2025 PES Capacity report was published just a few days ago, just on time, before this webinar, and is now available on the European Commission website and in the PES Knowledge Center. It's a report that we have published for many years, and we now publish this full capacity report every 2 years. This year's edition includes a special focus on the youth guarantee. We have also taken a closer look at two issues critical to EU's competitiveness. First, the skills-based approaches, which lie at the heart of the Union of Skills, and the role of PES in addressing labor shortages. You also find in this report a wealth quantitative data from the PES data collection, which has undergone improvements to enhance harmonization and clarity. Everything you should know about European PES state of play and evolution is in this report and this presentation. So I wish you all a productive and interactive webinar. Let's make the most of this presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Isabelle, for those words. So we've got, as I say, a quite packed agenda for the next hour and a half. I'm just going to run through, to help set the scene even more, some of the practical information that you need to know for the webinar. But let's start by looking at the objectives for this morning. So as stated, we want to look at the key findings from the report, and essentially we're looking both at European level trends. So what's the big picture across Europe? What can we see coming out from the experience of PES across Europe out of this report, but also what are the latest PES practices? It's always very inspiring, as well as understanding the European overview, to look at what public employment services are doing in practice on the ground, and to take inspiration and have exchanges about that. So they're the main objectives, and we will have presentations and opportunities to ask questions. So if we can look at the agenda already, we'll see that, so we're in the opening words now. In a moment, I'll launch a poll to get us started. And then we're delighted that we have actually three of the authors of the report that's just been introduced by Isabelle will be joining us to present this evolving landscape of PES in 2025, and I'll introduce each of those authors in due course. We'll then have an opportunity to ask some questions and have a brief discussion with the authors. Oh, someone's microphone, I think. And then we will move after with that the kind of European level
can't hear you.
Ed, you are muted.
Sorry, if I've muted, yeah. Okay. I think if other people's microphone turns on, maybe I was on until, did you hear me introducing the fact we have these three authors? Yeah, I'm delighted to be joined by three authors. So after the question and answer with the authors of the report, we're delighted that we'll be having the two presentations of PES practices from PES Denmark and from the Brussels region PES in Belgium from Activis. And again, after we've heard those two presentations, there'll be opportunities to ask questions and answers. So now the question is, well, how do we do that in practice? How do we ask our questions? So let me go through a few practical details. First of all, as Hamad mentioned at the beginning, for those of you that were here early, I know that people always ask and want to know. The presentations made today will be made available and shared with participants afterwards. We'll also be producing a short flash report, and the webinar recording will be made available on the PES Network YouTube channel. So all of the information will be provided afterwards. But then in terms of today, the way that you can engage with the presenters and the presentations is to ask questions via Slido. So lots of people I know are already used to this, but the chat feature here on Teams is used as people are doing to say hello to each other, and if you want to make any comments or if you have any technical questions, you can use the chat. But if you want to ask a question to one of the presenters, we ask that you use Slido. And you can see now that in the chat, the Slido link has been made available, or you can go directly to the Slido page and type in the event code PES, so hashtag PES. So let's get ourselves onto Slido. Let's kick off with a poll. So this can help make sure that we get our heads into the content, but we also make sure that we're able to use Slido effectively. So there's a QR code also on screen. So if you prefer to use the QR code, please scan the QR code or use the link in the chat or go directly and put hashtag PES. And let's get the first question up to get ourselves into today's topic. So looking at whether there's been an increase or decrease in the total number of registered unemployed, how would you complete this sentence? The total number of registered unemployed by PES in 2025 has, compared to last year. And if you're still looking to join, you can see the QR code on the left of the screen. Also the link in the chat if you prefer to use that. Okay, I think the votes are stabilizing. So just over half of you say that the total number of registered unemployed has increased, and that is correct. The total number of registered unemployed has increased. This is, across Europe, so we may see differences within countries. I'm not sure. We'll ask the authors of the report maybe. But it's interesting that some people felt that maybe the number had decreased and others stable, but the reality is that the number of registered unemployed has increased. That's what we're seeing across Europe. So that's the picture. So let's look now at one of the other kind of key findings of the report in terms of what PES are doing and how PES are working to try and address some of these challenges. So how would you estimate the percentage of public employment services with a fully developed matching process based on skills in 2025 on top of occupation? So do you think that the percentage of PES with a fully developed matching process based on skills is less than 30%, somewhere between 30 and 50%, or more than 50%? Okay. So most people are quite negative, to we say, about the extent of the number of PES with a fully developed matching process. That is actually correct. The number is around 25%. as I understand it. But the key word there is fully developed matching process. So, there's some grey areas. Some PES are developing. There's increasing work to develop the matching process based on skills. But in terms of fully developed matching processes, I understand that it's less than 30% at the moment. So, yeah, those of you that think that there's more than 50%, hopefully in the future, hopefully we'll work towards that across Europe. But at the moment, indeed, the situation is that it's less than 30%. Okay, so now hopefully everybody that wants to be on Slido is able to access Slido. That will be important for the question and answers. You'll see if you're in Slido, you should be able to see that the audience Q&A is open. I'll be moderating that, removing questions as we use them. But please, as people present shortly, start introducing already your questions, and we'll pick up on them after the presentations. But let's move now, without further ado, into our first set of presentations. As I said, we have three presenters to give us an overview of key aspects of the report. The first is Nicola Doul, the PES Network thematic expert, who will be presenting to us for about 10 minutes. Nicola, on the evolving landscape of PES in 2025. So please, the challenge for you is to give us that overview of the evolving landscape. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. This will be a challenge to have 10 minutes for the evolving. So just as a reminder, the next slide, please. Just as a reminder, we have the PES report analyzing trends in PES, so response to labor market changes, also organizational changes, and as Isabel already said, one of the big topics is how PES can address labor market shortages. The main data stem from the capacity questionnaire with information collected from 32 PES between April and June 2025, as well as the bench learning data collection. Next slide, please. So first of all, let me start with the organizational perspective. So the main institutional models and governance arrangements of PES vary significantly across countries, reflecting different institutional traditions and levels of decentralizations. So the most widespread organizational structure is that the PES operate as an independent public institution with a known management structure, but typically overseen by a ministry. Another smaller group of PES are fully integrated within the responsibility of the ministry, while other combine national integration with regional and local governance responsibilities. Only a sixth of PES have reported recent changes in the legal status or in the ministerial responsibility, with the most far-reaching reforms in Finland and Italy. Next slide, please. So to give a very brief overview of the key trends and challenges. So as we already heard, there was a slight rise in numbers of registered unemployed in 2024. I think the responses of the poll also included 2025 and early now 2026. And this rise in unemployment curbs a long trend or ends a long trend where we had an improvement of the unemployment situation. Also, we can see a little bit a change in the structure of the registered unemployed, with unemployed getting progressively older, more highly educated, and they are more likely to be women. As we just said, half of PES have implemented institutional or organizational reforms to respond to labor market needs. So one of the challenges PES face is limited resources and increasing caseload as the unemployed employment rise, but on the other hand, between 2023 and 2025, 62% of PES reported staff reductions, which then leads in increasing caseloads. From the content side, 90% of PES consider the mismatch between education or skills and the labor market needs as an obstacle, and specifically for young people. And finally, a challenge as well as 63% of PES face rising costs, which is linked to the inflation in the recent years. Next slide, please. So to give an overview of the main adjustments and the new services, we see that 2/3 of PES, as compared to the previous PES capacity report in 2023, offer more services to employers as well as more different types of services. And this is, of course, to address the labor market and skill shortages. Digitalization is ongoing, and digitalization has increased in easier tasks like job seeker registration, but also in profiling and in vacancy matching, as well as satisfaction monitoring. The vast majority of PES are involved in the management and coordination of the reinforced youth guarantee. 88% of PES have started to apply a skills-based approach to profiling. And finally, with a look to the green transition, PES are increasingly responding to green transition through development of strategies, partnerships, and adjustments of their services and active labor market programs. Next slide, please. Looking at the strategic objectives for 2024, we see that these are mainly outcome related. So with regard to job seekers, the targets are mainly to reduce unemployment or long-term unemployment or outflow from the registrar into employment. Interestingly, a few PES have also sustainable employment, so avoiding unemployment and the quality of employment in their targets. And also, interestingly, in the background of labor market shortages, the activation of inactive people or potential labor force has been taken up in the targets by a few PES. The employer-related targets refer to filling vacancies and improving matching employers' needs. Then still to improve the matching, we have targets related to active labor market programs, in particular trainings, as well as entrepreneurship programs have been named by a few. And targets also are related to the overall performance of the delivery and the development of services and active labor market programs, and as well the efficiency of the functioning of the PES. So improving efficiency of job placement, increasing the quality of the services, digitalization, which has already been named, and modernizing systems. Next slide, please. So, as we said, one key issue for PES in the context of increasing efficiency, and also in the context of tackling labor shortages, are skills. And here the role of PES in skills development is mainly about skills assessment. It is PES work on the taxonomy and passing skills. It is PES work on getting skills into the jobs profiling systems and not only the qualification, while the delivery of the training is taking place in general, in most cases, by partners of PES. And what also is important to see that elements of skills-based approaches are being adopted by PES not only in profiling, but also in their matching systems, and also, for example, PES skills level in vacancy description and employer work. So here we see an increasing focus of the skills base throughout the different activities of PES. Next slide, please. So now coming to the PES role in reducing labor shortages. So we said they are offering more services and diversified services. So we can group these type of services to reduce labor shortages into different parts. So one is also to reach out to employers to place more of disadvantaged groups. So this is to fill the vacancies, but also to place and to take the window of opportunity to place disadvantaged groups. But it is also to adapt the vacancies and the employers' expectations to the realities to the labor market. Then it is to develop services for job seekers for improved matching. So everything which is related to the efficiency we said before has also really the function to reduce labor shortages, intensified counseling, cooperation with sectoral partners, cooperation with private employment services, all that as well are activities that help to reduce labor shortages. And finally, an important part is also improving labor market information systems to better understand where the shortages are. So to be able to react on that and to adapt also training offers and so on to improve labor market information and skills anticipation. Next slide,
Just
please.
one more minute, Nicola. That's okay.
Yes. So the response to digital transformation, we already said it, PES have made a lot of improvements and mainly use it for satisfaction surveys and job seekers registration. So easier tasks, the more complex tasks with like individual action plans, orientation and guidance. We see here more in-person or mixed in-person and digital the service delivery. And the very last slide. The response to the green transition. So what we see here is that they adjust their services. They are involved in skills identification, in defining what green jobs and green skills are, and also to adapt training programs to support up and reskilling of the labor force. Mitigating the impact in case of large-scale job losses is also an area. And here again, a lot of cooperation with employers as well as with regional stakeholders to understand what is needed for reskilling and upskilling in the context of the green transition. Thank you. I think that was my last slide.
Thank you very much indeed, Nicola. So I see that there's just one question so far in the Q&A. Please do, as we keep hearing our presenters, start inputting your questions to the three presenters. But I'm delighted, as I said, that not only Nicola is joining us, but we have two other authors of the co-authors of the report. And the next one who has joined us this morning to present the work that they did in putting into the report is Duncan Coventry, who works for Alpha Metrics. Duncan, thank you for joining us this morning. So Duncan is the author of section 2 and 8 of the report. Section 2 looking at PES caseloads and section 8 on the PES spending. So these are the topics you're going to talk to us about, Duncan. So I mean, please as well, if you want to just explain what Alpha Metrics is, take a moment. But the floor is yours to present the PES caseloads and PES expenditure. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Yes, we're in charge of mainly organizing data collection for the PES network with quantitative data collection, primarily looking at numbers of registered job seekers, but there's other data in there, and I'm going to present some of the results from that to you all today. So in this presentation, I'm first going to look at the key trends in PES caseloads, looking at clients registered as unemployed job seekers with the PES, and the supply of job vacancies that are notified to the PES. Secondly, I'm going to look at key trends on PES expenditure. But before we do that, it's first useful to consider the economic and labour market context. Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, so in terms of the economic context, the figure on the right here shows the changes in real GDP in the EU during 2010 to 2024. In 2024, economic growth in the EU remains subdued as real GDP growth stood at just 1.1%. As we can see in the figure, this is stronger growth than we saw in 2023, which was only a growth of 0.4%, but is a significant slowdown compared to 2021 to 2022 as the EU recovered from the COVID crisis. Despite this limited growth, key labour market indicators have improved. So the labour market participation rate rose, the employment rate reached a new high, the unemployment rate reached a new low. And further to this, as shown in the figure on the left here, the number of people unemployed across the EU fell to a historic low of 12.9 million. This is down significantly compared to a peak of 23.6 registered in 2013. However, the limited growth in 2024 was reflected in the job vacancy rate, which reduced slightly in 2024. Next slide, please. Turning now to the key PES client base, specifically to persons registered with PES as unemployed job seekers. The figure presented here shows the stock of registered unemployed job seekers across the PES network during 2010 to 2024. There are two series shown, one in grey, one in blue. The difference being that the blue series excludes PES in Italy and Luxembourg, for which the data is not available for the full-time series. If we look at the most recent data, we can see that while the number of unemployed people in general contracted slightly in 2024, by 1.1%. The number of registered unemployed job seekers rose slightly by 0.7%. If we look at the full-time series, we can see that between 2013 and 2022, the number of registered unemployed job seekers was in slow and almost continuous downward trend, with the sole exception of a rise in 2020 due to the COVID crisis. Since 2022, however, the rate of decline has noticeably stalled. So overall, this long-term decline we've seen coincided with a similar trend in numbers of unemployed and improving labour market conditions. The lack of progress we've seen since 2022 and the slight rise in 2024 could be an early warning sign of worsening conditions, or even the signal the start of a reversal of this long-term trend we've seen. Next slide, please. There's also been some important structural changes in the PES client base since 2010. The figure shown here provides a breakdown of the registered unemployed job seekers by level of education, age and gender, both in 2010 and 2024, so we can compare those. And we can see three main shifts in the composition of the PES client base from this. First, there's been a progressive feminization of the client base, with the share of women rising from 46.8% to 50.2%, driven primarily by participation rates rising more among women than men. We've seen that PES clients are getting older, so 55 and over rose from being 13.3% to 22.2% of PES clients between 2010 and 2024, while the under 30s fell from 27.6% to 22.2%. This largely reflects increased activity among persons over 55, but also an increasing underrepresentation of young unemployed people among PES clients. Lastly, PES clients are progressively more educated. We've seen the share of tertiary educated clients increasing from 13.4% to 21%. This is driven primarily by rising numbers of people pursuing higher levels of education. These trends imply changing demands on the PES in terms of the services needed and the types of jobs to which clients will need access. Next slide, please. Turning now to job vacancies, specifically those that are notified to the PES by employers, we can see some reflection of the slowing growth in this data. In 2024, there was an average of 1.1 million vacancies notified to the PES each month, but this was 11.1% fewer than in the previous year. The figure shown here shows on the left 2 series, the average number of vacancies notified to the PES each month in dark blue, and then the average number of open vacancies in the market in light blue, so the broader vacancy market. Both are presented as an index with 2014 set to 100 to see the change since 2010. And then the ratio of these is shown on the right-hand side of this figure, providing an indication of the extent to which employers report their vacancies to the PES. This shows that monthly notifications to PES accounted for 82.2% of the stock of open vacancies in 2014, but only 49.3 in 2024. And during the same period, the average number of open vacancies in the market doubled. So this implies a decrease in the PES share of an expanding vacancies market. Some potential explanatory factors for this could be the digitalization of the job market, facilitating the posting of vacancies. It could be the changing nature of vacancies posted and employment preferences. Indeed, labor shortages in particular occupations may prompt employers to exploit private sector recruitment channels focused on seeking candidates that are already in work or with very specific skill sets. Next slide, please. So turning now to PES expenditure. Across the 27 PES for which we have the data, spending stood at 89.4 billion euro in 2024. This represents 0.8% of GDP and was up 6.2% compared to the previous year. It's important to note that expenditure varies considerably across PES, reflecting diverse characteristics of national labour markets, government policy, and most importantly, perhaps, the remit of the PES and how that varies across different PES. And the figure shown here shows that the PES expenditure accounted for over 2% of GDP in 3 countries, 1 to 2% in 6 countries, but less than 1% in the majority of countries. And a big driving factor behind these differences is responsibility for unemployment benefits and/or social benefits in terms of determining the level of expenditure. Indeed, if we look at PES with no such responsibilities, all of those spent less than 1% of GDP, while all of those that are spending higher and higher amounts tend to spend increasingly large amounts on unemployment benefits and/or other social benefits. Overall, if we're looking across PES, more than half of PES expenditure 2024 was on social benefits, mostly unemployment benefits, just over 1/4 on active labour market policies, 1/10 on staff, and the remainder of expenditure was then on staff training, pro forma expenditure, and other expenditure, each of these accounting for at most 5%, just under 5%. The rise in expenditure in 2024.
Just Duncan, if I don't want to rush you too much, but just the last minute, if that's okay, before we.
I think the next one will be very quick. Was driven primarily by a 8.9% rise in expenditure on social benefits. So that's driving the changes we saw overall. Next slide, please. Okay, so to look at spending over the longer term, we need to look at expenditure in constant prices. So we need to account and adjust the data for price inflation, and that's what we have done. And if we look at this data, as is illustrated in the figure, when we look at the complete line, we can see that between 2010 and 2019, expenditure progressively reduced and by 26.2% overall. In 2020, however, the pandemic impact is clearly visible as expenditure rose 70.3%. This is primarily attributed to provision of financial support for employed people working in sectors and professions that were put at risk during the crisis. Then between 2020 and 2023, we saw expenditure fall 42.5% as this kind of pandemic support was wound down and came to an end. And then lastly, in 2024, we saw expenditure rose 3.3% in constant prices. Expenditure in constant prices is 25.2% lower in 2024 than in 2010, while expenditure unadjusted, that has been unadjusted, that is in actual prices rather than constant prices, is actually slightly higher than in 2010. So it's 0.3% higher. And this really highlights, and you can see the gap on the figure between the two series. And this highlights the impact that inflation has had on the purchasing power of the PES. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much. And I'll pass the floor back.
Thank you very much indeed, Duncan, for that overview. There's I see some questions appearing now in the Q&A, quite a few questions. I'll come back to you after the next presentation, Duncan, to maybe ask you so you can already have a look maybe at those questions so that you can be ready. To participants as well, if there's questions that have been asked already that you would really like to hear the answer to, please do upvote them. Like them so that they rise up in case we don't have time to take all those questions. But I promised you 3 of the authors of the report, 3 of the co-authors would be talking to us today. So delighted that Helene Javing from the PES Mutual Learning team is going to be talking to us about the PES involvement in the Reinforced Youth Guarantee. I saw there was already a question about that in the Q&A, Helene, but please, for the next 6-7 minutes, can you give us an overview of what you found in this latest report? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Ed, and good morning, everybody. I'll try to be brief. I'll give a very short presentation on the main findings in this year's PES Capacity report about the PES involvement in the Reinforced Youth Guarantee. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So for this year's PES Capacity report, we launched a second questionnaire, and this focused on PES involvement in the Reinforced Youth Guarantee. And thereby we received feedback from 31 PES. So next to PES from EU member states, we had feedback from 3 regional PES in Belgium, Wallonia, Flanders and Brussels region. And we also had responses from Norway and Liechtenstein. And the section in the report on PES involvement in the Reinforced Youth Guarantee focus on several topics. So we look at the main types of support PES offer to young people, and the mandate and the main areas of responsibilities of PES. We look at monitoring and evaluation of PES services offered to young people. We look at information used by PES to identify young people's needs. And also we looked at the main labour market challenges for young people when they enter the labour market. Next slide, please. So I think we go one slide back. Okay, so we've got, now you can go to the next slide, please. So first of all, it's important to realize that on average across the PES network, young people have gone down. So there's fewer young people who are aged under 30 who are registered with PES. And although there is a decrease of registered unemployed young people, the PES involvement in supporting the delivery of the youth guarantee still remains high, which you can see on this slide, because we asked in the survey about involvement of PES in the overall management and coordination of the national and regional youth guarantee scheme, and also if they're involved in the coordination of overall institutional, either national or regional policies that impact on the labour market integration of young people. So in comparison to 2023, there have been no real changes in PES involvement in the coordination and management of the youth guarantee and the institutional policies impacting on the labour market integration of young people remains high across all PES. So the findings give a little bit of an impression that there's been a slight decrease, but that is because there's a higher number of PES that have replied to the survey in 2025. But when looking more long term and including the data available for 2021, we do actually see an upward trend of the number of PES involved in the management and coordination of the youth guarantee scheme. And although not all the PES are involved in the overall coordination of the scheme, they can then still be involved in the implementation of the 4 distinct phases of the youth guarantee scheme, for example, via outreach, mapping, offer and preparation. So all PES that responded to us have some levels of involvement in the delivery and the actual implementation during one of or several of these phases. In most cases, PES have joint responsibility for this together with other partners, and sometimes they do it on their own, so they are sole responsible. And in some cases, PES involvement has remained the same, while in other cases, PES involvement has gone up. For example, in the cases of outreach and preparation. In outreach, there's a significant increase of PES involved in reaching out to vulnerable young people and raising awareness about the Reinforced Youth Guarantee. And also when it comes to preparation, PES involvement has gone up, and particularly in the use of profiling tools to tailor individual action plans. And when it comes to the preparation phase, PES are often also involved in offering short-term preparatory training to young people, as we can see on the next slide. So as you can see, there's a lot of different types of skills targeted by PES when offering this training. Almost half of PES respondents, so it was 45%, offer short-term training to young people as part of the implementation of the Reinforced Youth Guarantee. And this has gone down in comparison to the findings of the PES Capacity report in 2023, when there was 75% of PES which offered this type of support service. So there are significant differences between PES in terms of the skills that are targeted when they offer short-term preparatory training to young people. However, most of the short-term training we found is offered on the use of search tools. So for example, focusing on offering how to identify skills, how to draft a CV, but other highly sought after courses are also offered by PES, and they focus, for example, on improving skills, digital skills, and also entrepreneurial skills. As you can see, levels are very similar to the findings in 2023. And also short-term training focused on language skills has gone up in comparison to 2023. But however, the focus on green skills in preparatory short-term training has gone down in comparison to 2023, from 32% to 26% and 25%. It's not really clear why that is the case. So we can go to the next slide, please. So for the first time in 2025 questionnaire, we also included questions to PES about what they consider to be the main challenges for young people when they enter the labor market. And thereby it was clear that for a vast majority of PES, they consider the mismatch between education and skills and actual labor market needs as the main challenge for young people when entering the labor market. And in order to address this, some PES have reported that they take specific initiatives to better align education and skills to labor market needs, for example, via specific skills-related initiatives such as increased career guidance, promotion of vocational education and training. Another huge challenge that PES consider to be an obstacle for young people when entering the labor market is the lack of experience. And again, some PES give examples of what they do to respond to this obstacle. So they offer work training periods, they offering apprenticeships to young people so that they already get more experience before entering the labor market. Social and regional disparities has also been seen as an obstacle, as well as economic factors and labor market conditions can be an obstacle for young people when entering the labor market. So some PES reported that the global economic downturn, including inflation, impacts young people and needs in particular. And then there was a few other smaller types of challenges, such as discrimination and bias in hiring practices. So this was in a very, very short nutshell, a short overview of the section in the report about PES involvement in delivery of the Youth Guarantee. There's obviously a lot more in the report. I'm going to leave it here. I'm conscious of time limits. Happy to respond to any potential questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Helene. And thank you to all three of our presenters. We've got about 10 minutes or a little less for questions and answers. Actually, the first question I'm going to pose to you, Helene, was actually the first question that was asked on the Q&A. I mean, if you could just clarify to people, why you chose the Youth Guarantee as a spotlight topic for the 2025 report.
So we normally what we look at is what are the priorities, what is something that is very significant impacting labor market shortages, for example. So that was one of the reasons. We also did it 2 years ago, so it felt like a good time to relook at, to revisit the findings and look at has there been any changes. And we also look normally at what EMCO reviews are looking into. So this is a committee dealing with employment and socio-economic issues, and they also focused on the Youth Guarantee this year, which is why we wanted to contribute to that by taking it into account into our PES survey.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. So Duncan, I'm going to come to you now because I think there were a few questions came up as you were presenting. The first one that's been upvoted 4 times there is, how do you avoid duplication in the number of vacancies? Because potentially the same vacancies are being posted through the public employment services and through private services. So how do you avoid duplication?
Well, this is certainly one of the most challenging aspects of any kind of data on vacancies. I think here we need to separate the 2 types of data that we're using here. We use firstly data on job vacancies notified to the PES. That data comes directly from the PES and is from their administrative data where they are dealing with that. So in that case, it's isolated only to vacancies notified to the PES. The second series that we looked at in the chart is the annual average stock of vacancies which is derived from Eurostat's job vacancy statistics, which primarily relies on survey-based quarterly business surveys to gather some of that data. So inherently kind of reduces some of the duplication, but I understand there are various techniques that Eurostat uses to try and deal with that, particularly with by using the survey, and so we're relying on them to have implemented that within their own system. So there's kind of 2 different data sets here, but I would say that the administrative data from the PES, which is the data that we help collect, there we're only collecting from the PES, so there's only really one source that it comes from, and we rely on the PES themselves when they're providing that data to us and processing data, that they are doing the work within their own databases to deal with duplication.
Thank you very much. I think the next question is also possibly to you. I'm not sure if you're able to answer it. What is the general market share of job vacancies handled by PES compared to the overall number of vacancies available on the labour market in the EU?
In this case, we do not have that direct figure, the direct figure as such, for technical reasons, in the fact that we collect data as an inflow of new vacancies into the PES register per month, an average across the year, while the job vacancy statistics is an annual average stock figure. So when you're comparing using the former as a numerator and the latter as a denominator, that doesn't really give you the market share per se, because you would have to compare stock figures of both. But we're using it as an indication of maybe direction rather than an actual clear market share. That being said, as part of the PES data collection, we do try to we request sometimes from PES what market share they have estimated, but it can be quite difficult to estimate that figure. Not all PES are able to provide that data, and it varies very much in how they've approached that. So we can't really give a specific figure on that. I think that this also helps to answer another question I saw in the chat, which was to do with, yes, the flow figure and standing figure in figure 2.9, I think. So that's we're not trying to present a very clear market share, the share of the stock that is associated with PES, but more a kind of to use it to understand the direction of where the PES's market share is going.
Okay, thank you very much. There was also the question, I don't know if you want to comment on this, about comparing EQF with the ICD and your choice of which one you've been working with.
Yes, this is very much due to historical reasons. So the PES data quantitative data collection has been collecting data since the reference year 2010, and since its inception, it has been collecting data using ISGED rather than this alternative. So really, there hasn't been any at this stage any push for changing that, and it's remained so it provides us with a consistent time series. I think it's more of a historical. It's been set up to use that since the start, really.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Duncan. There's we just have 1 minute left. Nicola, I don't know whether there were any. You can see the questions in the Q&A. I don't know if there were any that you wanted to pick up on that you feel able to to answer. I mean, people are asking about data on migrants and refugees, approaches for supporting older workers and sustainable employment.
Yes, of course. I mean, older workers are one of the named target groups of PES, so it's not the main, but it's still named as one. And of course, the demographic change is one of the pressing issues. So what we have in the report and what also convened with other reports on older workers is that PES mainly have employment incentives at their hand. So kind of wage subsidies, less social security contributions, then a lot of counseling. We have seen that for years. Counseling for older workers to get expectations right, to increase self-confidence and all that. That is also important. Training, of course. So often that is then not vocational training and long-term trainings, but short-term trainings like digital skills or some precise technical skills are still offered to older workers. So I think these are the main instruments PES have at hand. I think there was another question about migrants. So looking still at the targets of the PES, a few PES have them as a target as well, so not all. So that is probably the smaller target group, unfortunately, given the labor shortages and given migration flow there are. Then, of course, it is mentioned also in the report that to overcome labor shortages, skills migration does play a role, and there are examples of PES which have programs and strategies in place to even prioritize certain types of migrants over others, to bring them quickly into employment, to offer integration courses, to offer language courses, to offer skills adaptation. So there are specific instruments and services and LMPs which are provided to migrants as well. So less perhaps directly.
Thank you. There's just
yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, for those responses. There's just a final question. I don't know if this is an easy or difficult question to answer. A couple of people have asked it, and it was linked to the poll question that I launched at the beginning in terms of how this concept of full matching is defined and how that has maybe evolved in recent times. I don't know. Is that set out in the report? Can people find that definition?
So what people can find in the report is really kind of we asked PES on how much they use digital tools and also AI to increase matching efficiency. And I think the major message here is that they combine the use of AI and the digital tool to bring up skills-based matching. So that is coming more and more. But they also use in-person kind of counts and matching as well. So there might be something proposed by AI and other digital tools, but the employment counselor may have still a look and kind of judge and find his own guidance on that. So I would say it's a big message that as the more complex the things are, and you have many skills and you have many aspects there, and all the discussion with the risks of AI and profiling and so on is probably the best to have still the in-person in there and using effectively what the tools can bring you to increase the efficiency, and you will find that in the report. I hope I answered the question.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, no, that's great. And thank you again to the three presenters, Nicola, Duncan and Helene. Thank you for joining us this morning, and congratulations on all the work to deliver the report, and encourage everyone again to, after this webinar, to download it and read it in full. But now, as I said at the beginning, we like to balance the European overview that we've been having now by diving into PES practices and taking inspiration from what's happening on the ground. So I'm delighted that we're joined by two speakers from the Danish PES, and we'll be hearing about the Danish approach to addressing labour market shortages with a focus on skills assessment and its links to training provision. So we're going to have two presenters. So I'm going to hand over to both of you and allow you to arrange the handover between yourselves. But Anita Marie Glenny is a special consultant at the Danish Agency for Labour Market and Recruitment, and Julie Alice Reisberg is the head of section at the Danish Agency for Labour Market and Recruitment. So Anita and Julie, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ed, and thank you everyone for being here today, and thank you for the opportunity to present. My name is, as Ed just said, Julia Lisa Risberg, and I work with international relations, including the PES Network and EMCO at the Danish Agency for Labour Market and Recruitment, also known as STAR. I'm joined today by my colleague, Anita Marie Glenny, who's a PhD in economics and senior advisor here at STAR. Together, we will attempt to give you an insight into the Danish approach to identifying and responding to labour market shortages. Our presentation today will focus on how this approach is put into practice, specifically how data on skill shortages is translated directly into education and upskilling policy. And we hope to offer some concrete inspiration that may be relevant across different national contexts. So I will now hand over to Anita, who will briefly introduce you to how Denmark collects and analyzes data on labor shortages.
Yes, and so you can turn over to next slide. Thank you. Yeah, so I got the opportunity to talk about our labor market balance model, which is a statistical model we use to assess the current labor shortage that we have across an occupational dimension and across geographical areas in Denmark. And so in short, our model captures both the demand side and the supply side of the labor market by asking the questions of whether firms are able to recruit the workers that they need, and if unemployed workers can find jobs. So the answer to these two questions, they form 4 categories of our model. So an area can be evaluated as being in equilibrium, and that will be occupation and geographical areas where workers and firms successfully find each other. We can have areas where there's a labor shortage, meaning that workers are able to find jobs, but the firms struggle to recruit. And in contrary, we can have areas where there will be a jobs shortage, meaning that firms can recruit, but the unemployed workers struggle to find jobs. And then finally, we have this category called paradox, where neither workers nor firms can find each other. So this will be areas where there is a clear mismatch between the supply and demand side. And so to assess whether workers are able to find jobs, so the supply side of our model, we use administrative data to measure the share of unemployed workers who find a job within 3 months. And so the rate of this determines whether workers are able to find jobs. On the demand side, we rely on high frequency survey data, which we target towards firms who have posted vacancies, and then they report whether they were able to successfully fill those positions. So this survey data provide us with unique information about the recruitment outcomes, which we don't have available in administrative data. So we combine this survey data with register-based indicators of an unemployment ratio, recruitment intensity, and the share of recruitment that is made through a job posting. So together, these data inputs allow us to estimate the likelihood that firms will be facing recruitment difficulties. And this is the way that we quantify labor shortage on the demand side. Yeah. So a short introduction to our labor market model, and you can, turn on to the next slide. Thank you. And so this, as I said, our model classifies each occupation in across geographical areas, but it can also provide us with aggregated result on a national level. So here you see an example of our labor market balance, where we can see that electricians are assessed to be in labor shortage across all geographical areas, whereas an occupation as pedagogues, they show a more mixed picture, where we have a shortage in some areas, but not in others. And so each occupation that is classified to be in shortage, primarily at a national level, they will form the basis of a so-called positive list, which serve as a key input for political decisions on education policy and foreign labor recruitment, which Julia will take over and tell you a little bit more about.
Yes, thank you. So, next slide, please. Building on this overview, I will now elaborate a little on how Denmark translates labor market data into concrete policy. Because there's a direct link between identified skill shortages and the design of upskilling schemes within Danish active labor market policy, and 3 of which are shown on this slide. At the core are these data-driven so-called positive lists, defining which training programs are eligible for support. So these lists are developed in close cooperation with social partners, combining data with sector-specific knowledge and updated once or twice a year to reflect current labor market conditions. This ensures training is targeted at areas of documented demand and allows the system to respond to employment challenges regardless of their cause, avoiding the pitfall of narrowly targeted initiatives built on uncertain forecasts. So we have the 3 schemes as an example: the educational boost scheme with 110% unemployment benefits. I will elaborate a little bit on that on the next slide. But we also have the regional, sorry, we also have the regional education fund. And finally, we have as an example the 6 weeks of job-oriented training. Yes, so next slide, please. Thank you. The scheme, the educational boost scheme with 110% unemployment benefits, was introduced as a temporary measure in August 2020. The scheme was made permanent in January 2024 and further expanded as part of Denmark's recent employment reform in January 2026. So the aim is to increase the supply of skilled workers in key sectors, including those relevant for the green and digital transition. It targets unemployed individuals aged 30 or above who are either unskilled or hold a vocational education and training qualifications unused for at least 5 years. The defining feature is the financial incentive. Participants receive up to 110% of their employment benefits while studying, which enables adults with financial obligations to pursue upskilling. So the positive list is developed with social partners and updated annually for the scheme, and it defines which programs qualify. And all of these lead to occupations in areas of documented labor shortages. So on this slide in the bottom, you can see a few examples of which programs are currently on the list. For example, we have the social and healthcare assistants, welder, industrial technicians, and we have a lot of others. I think it's 21 different occupations on the list, on the current list. Yes, so we hope we gave you a little insight into the Danish approach to labor market shortages and how to fulfill them. So we thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed to both of you for your presentation. People will hopefully have noticed that I cleaned up the Q&A area in Slido and freed it up so that people can now ask questions to our participants. I see there are a few questions appearing now for you, but what we'll do is we will take the next presentation. After the next presentation, I will ask Nicola to give a short commentary on the 2 examples, and then we'll go to the Q&A box, and I'll come back to you with some of the questions that we're seeing appear there. If people are asking questions, I can see the 3 questions now. We can see it's obviously for Denmark. Future questions, maybe just clarify if it's to one of the countries in particular or to both. But having said thanks again for that great presentation, we'll move on to the next inspiring example from PES across Europe. As I said, we were going to be hearing from Acturus. the Public Employment Service for Brussels region, actually where I'm based here in Belgium, and delighted to be joined by Daan van Mulder, who will be talking to us about their approach to developing a skills-based labour market. So Daan, please, for the next 10 minutes or so, the floor is yours. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the introduction, and hello everyone. Well, hello from Brussels. Today I have the absolute pleasure to talk to you about our language and digital skill assessment tool, which I will refer to as BCLN from now on. BCLN is short for Bilan de compétences numériques et linguistiques. Next slide, please. So why do we test actually? So first of all, you have to know that BCLN, the skills and the language and digital skill assessment, stands for structured digital assessment of language and digital skills. The language skills are either French or Dutch, and sets of digital skills. Why do we test those sets of skills? Well, we have noticed that in the Brussels region, it is a bilingual region, whereas French and Dutch are spoken both. 50% of the employers require at least one additional working language. So either they ask French or Dutch or English extra on top of one already spoken language. And on the other hand, we noticed that 80% of the job seekers registered at Actiris only speak one language or none of the both languages present in the Brussels region. So we have a skill gap between what employers ask and what job seeker can offer. Also, digital autonomy is now basic employability. Everything is online applications, emails, uploads, and e-services. Next slide, please. So how does the tool work, the BCLN tool? First of all, the job seeker has to register at Actiris. We will give them all the information about all the services Actiris can offer and how they can access the test. Next step, they take the test. Very important, they can take the test at different times in their counseling process. So they can take it at registration, they can take it some months after it, they can take it 6 months after it. So they don't have to take it in the beginning of the counseling process. After each test, there is a debrief moment with one of our counselors to look at the results and look where we can orient the job seeker to. So the orientation can go to training, either a voucher for training, or either Brulingua, which is a language skilling application on your smartphone. And after each orientation, there's a follow-up with the job seeker. Next slide, please. So how does the Bilan de compétences helps? Actually, we move away from diplomas and CVs and we go to objectively measured skills, either language and digital. And it shows very early on in the process with the job seekers the visible barriers that are present, and that refrains job seekers from finding a job. It supports our evidence-based counseling, so we get the test results, we do the debrief, and we get into concrete actions. And we align the job seeker skills levels with the labor market requirements, which are in the Brussels region, at least the knowledge of one of the other spoken languages and the digital skills. Next slide, please. So what are the outcomes of the debrief moments for the language test? Sorry, what we have seen and what we remarked in the past months is that 50% of the job seekers that require training in the language department, 50% of them postpone the training because they don't have the time and they are in the urgency of finding a job on the labor market in Brussels. Next slide, please. For the digital debrief outcomes, we saw that 81% or more than 80% of the tested job seekers already are skilled in digital skills. Next slide, please. So our tendencies, it's a very young project. We started in 2023, so we are now 2 years into it. Is that the majority of job seekers confirms what we already measured in the data, is that they have poor skills on French or Dutch. And so it validates the strategic needs for the BCLN, so we can identify the language gaps and work on it. For the most job seekers, the digital literacy is not the the primary barrier. Linguistic skills are and are very important. What we have measured and see in the daily counseling process is that motivating job seekers towards training remains a critical behavioral challenge. So most job seekers are in the urgency and they want to find a job now, and they think training is something extra they can take later on. But actually, we have to work on the fact that training now is more important than finding or will help finding a job more easily. What we also saw the last 2 years, it started as a tool, but now it becomes more than a tool for our counselors. The BC then becomes really a tool. It's not only a screening tool, but it's a practical guidance that supports real decisions for our counselors, so they can really base their decisions for who they send to training and who they give training vouchers on real data that they collect from the tests. Next slide, please. So the key takeaways I wanted to share with you is that keep the narrative simple, assess easily the both tests or the tests are easily accessible for everyone. There's a very quick debrief. So in 2 weeks after they took the test, they get debriefs with one of our counselors, and we orient directly to action. So actually, the goal is after every debrief moment, we can give a solution to the job seeker. There's an explicit link with the Brussels job labor market. We try to attack the hidden skill gaps on digital and language skills. We embed the tool in different touch points. That is registration, the information sessions job seekers get, the job goal interviews, and many more. So our counselors really talk a lot about it with job seekers, and we make a lot of publicity about it. And we also have a dashboard to steer the volume, the coverage, the providers, and the outcomes, so we can see how many tests have been taken in 2025, how many Dutch, how many French, how many digital, and where we have to offer more solutions in language and digital training. Thank you very much. This was a very short presentation on a very big project.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dan. I'm sure there's lots more you could have probably talked to him for another hour, as could our Danish colleagues. But thank you for sticking to time so well. Really interesting presentations. And now I see there's questions in the Q&A. I think, Nicola, actually, let's take the questions first, and then maybe I'll come back to you for your kind of key takeaways at the end, as it would be nice, I think, as a kind of a closing message. But I'll start going through some of the questions I can see in the chat. Please do keep asking your questions. Colleagues from Denmark, there was a question of clarification about the reference to 110%, the benefits. You talked about the educational boost scheme with the 110% unemployment benefits. I assume that means they get 10% more than traditional. And can you just clarify how is that right?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, the 110% corresponds to a 10% increase in the unemployment benefits.
Okay, thank you very much. And then also a question for you. It says in your model, do you focus on skills or occupations when calculating the matching efficiency?
Yes, so we focus on occupations, but the way that we classify occupation is according to the ISCO, which is taking more into account competences. But it is in an occupational dimension that we classify labor shortage. Okay,
thank you very much indeed. Dan, coming back to you in Brussels. The Actress test, is that done online, the test to identify skills and needs, and when do you conduct that test? Is it during the registration, or maybe does it happen later?
It is done online, and job seekers can take it during registration, but also after registration. If they don't have the time during the registration, they can take it afterwards. So there's no fixed time or moment in the counseling process when they can take the test. They can take it anytime. It's an online test. If job seekers are not digitally skilled, they can ask for help of some of our activities partners who do the test together with them online.
Okay, thank you very much. And you were able to clarify kind of what digital skills are tested, because obviously digital skills is quite a broad term. There's lots of different ways that you could assess digital skills, and it obviously changes quite a lot as technology changes. But yeah, you were able to kind of explain what skills are tested and how the standards are decided?
So the standards are the European reference matrix for digital skills. Some main topics that are tested are the fact that someone can look up information online, find information online. Also communication tools, like can someone send text messages, can someone email, can someone get an attachment in an email, can someone copy and paste text, for instance. Can someone like access a computer? If someone is taking the test, we think that they can access a computer, but it's one of the questions in the test is, are you taking this test alone, or are you getting help from someone else? So that's one of the things. Another thing is online security and how do you handle online security. And I heard they are updating the tests now in do you recognize AI generated messages or images or movies or little like films, to get those skills also more up level.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to come back to the colleagues in Denmark. There was a comment and a question, an appreciation of the scheme that sounds very interesting. But could you maybe share some of the challenges that you've maybe faced in implementing this scheme, and maybe how you've been able to overcome those? But yeah, what have been the major challenges that you faced?
So in terms of, just for me to understand the question, in terms of our labor market model, or how it's applied in like political priorities of educational.
I mean, I think the question just says, can you tell us about some of the challenges? So I think it could be in any domain, in any aspect of it. You know, where do you see that the main challenges have been? Is it, you know, practical, political, or technical?
Yeah, so I guess I'm the more technical side of it, or for the statistical model, and so our labor market model has been revised recently because it had some problems in that we weren't able to classify labor shortage in every occupation every time, because at some point we only relied on survey data where we ask firms how well they if they were able to recruit. But now, because we are able to leverage with register-based data on unemployment ratio and recruitment intensity, this is information that we have for all occupation all the time. So we use a statistical model to estimate also. So I guess that's a challenge that we have had and now have overcome, because we can take in some statistical methods and more register-based data. Yeah, so that's one. I don't know if, Julie, we have any...
Yes, maybe I can mention that in terms of challenges, we, well, in general, getting people to participate in upskilling programs, there's a tendency that is the people who are already skilled who would like to participate, and those unskilled are not too willing to participate. But we actually had some quite good results for this scheme in particular. Well, the permanent version of the scheme will be formally evaluated in 2026, but we have some preliminary insights, and between August 2020 and September 2024, nearly 3,800 individuals started a VET program under the scheme. And in terms of participants' educational background, around 40% have primary or lower secondary education as their highest completed level, while 33% already have a VET qualification. So we find that the preliminary results are good. But we will get back with more with more insights when the scheme will be officially evaluated later.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. There's another question for you in Denmark about in the upskilling process, to what extent the recognition of prior learning is considered? How do you take account of that in the upskilling process?
Well, we have the normal admission requirements for the educational programs. So in that process, it is possible to address if people have prior learning. But that's in the educational system and the general admission requirements for the programs. You have to fulfill them as well in order to participate in the scheme.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification. Dan, coming back to you, there's a question about the awareness levels of employers about the tool that you've been talking about, the BCLN, the Digital Language Skills Assessment. How would you, I mean, it's obviously can't put a number, but how would you assess the kind of levels of awareness of this tool?
That's a very difficult question, and I don't really have the answer. I cannot give you the percentage of it, but employers that seek the help of Actiris to find employees, they get informed about the existence of the test, and also the test results are embedded in job seekers' profiles in our own systems. So when employers publish their job offer on our site, they can also access our database with potential profiles for their job offer, and they can see if someone has taken the language test, if someone has taken the language test, and their levels of language proficiency and digital proficiency. So they can see it. We talk about it to employers, but only the employers that come to Actiris to find employees.
Okay, thank you very much. And there's a question about whether the tool is primarily for foreign-born citizens. I think probably it's, well, you can comment because it's obviously Brussels has the two languages and the
Yeah, it's a very to give you a full answer on that question, I would have to give you a whole presentation on how Belgium works. It's fairly difficult, but the Brussels region officially has two languages, French and Dutch, but people who live in Brussels mainly speak French. So there's a very small Dutch-speaking community in Brussels, but employers ask for Dutch and French proficiency in their job offers. So we offer the test to native-born people in Brussels, but also newcomers in Brussels to define their language and digital skills.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. There's a question about NEET, which I will ask. That will be the final question that I'll ask to both of you. I think it's a question addressed to both PES about how you particularly focus on young people not in education, employment or training. But just, Dan, there's a question for you about the transferability of your tool. In terms of, is this an expense? Is it very expensive? Does it need very innovative ICT? Do you see it as a transferable tool, or has it been quite challenging?
No, I think it can be transferable. It was also the execution of the project was actually fairly short because it's two tests we bought externally. It's a PES test and an LAO test, which are both officially European standardized tests. And we embed the results actually in our own systems, so we can use the outcome. So it's actually transferable.
Okay, thank you very much. That's encouraging. So people who are interested can also find, contact you maybe for more information. We can look in. It's always good to transfer these good practices when we can. That's the aim of these European level exchange and learning events as well, to explore this kind of transferability of good practices. Very quickly, actually, before we ask about the NEETs for Denmark, this is a question that was asked, I think, during your presentation, but do you survey the employers who advertise roles? And if you do, what is the response rate of employers that you survey?
So I guess this is a question related to our data input for the demand side. And yes, we survey the firms who have posted vacancies online. So that's a way to target the firms that we know are recruiting. A few years back, we just surveyed firms, but not necessarily the ones that we knew were recruiting. So and our response rate is fairly good. I think we have around 55% in response rate, but it depends. We both, the model we have now, we both have emails that give us the first part of the response rate, and then we also have some a call center allocated. So yeah, 55% in response rate from firms.
Okay. Thank you very much. So then, the last question that I think we've got time for, just how do you particularly address needs in your approach? To Denmark first, maybe. So young people not in education, employment, or training. Do you take particular account of their needs?
Well, we do not in this particular educational boost scheme. We have a separate initiative called the Youth Boost, which is a big scheme in itself. So I haven't, I don't have the specifics on that, but I'm sure we can provide it, no problem if it's requested. But of course, the educational boost scheme, as we have presented today, is also open for needs, and well, yeah, it's open for everyone who qualify. Yes, but we do have a separate scheme called the Youth Boost, which we will be happy to talk about or provide more information if necessary.
Okay, thank you very much. Dan, same question for you.
Yeah. Actually, the BCLN started as a project for needs. So it's something that was developed especially for young people not in education, training, or employed. So now they take the test for young people. They have to take the test. They are required when they subscribe. And the test results, they also get their debrief. But during the debrief, if one of our counselors really thinks that the youngster is a need, they will refer to one of our partners. We have different partners who are specialized in working with need youngsters, and they will get so they will do a handover to the partner where the counseling of the young needs can start, and it's very specialized and it's very focused on training and getting them employed.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, and thank you to all three speakers, both for your presentations and for all the questions. I think we managed to get through quite a lot of questions today, so that was great. So thank you for joining us today and sharing your experiences. I saw as well that Isabel from DG Employment put a link in the chat to a report from on the EC website about figures on needs. So, and also there's another one from CEDEFOP there in the chat. So if people are interested in the latest figures and approaches on needs, there's these two reports available in the chat, as well as what we've heard from the two PES. So Nicola, we're running out of time this morning, just a few minutes left. But just could you briefly in a couple of minutes give us, what do you see as the key takeaways from what we've heard from these two examples? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I will try to be extremely brief. So I think the Danish example is an excellent illustration on how you can use skills anticipation. I think from the technical point of view, from the skills anticipation model they have, it is interesting to see that the course of time they mix different data sources, the survey and the registry data, to get it. So I think that is an interesting point. But the most interesting is the use made out of it to really steer training and educational offer to these shortages. And I understood most of them are short-term, so short-term reactions. Of course, the tool could probably also offer a lot for mobility, regional mobility and international mobility as well, but that was not the focus. But just to illustrate that these kind of skills anticipation tools and improved labor market information systems really help to increase efficiency. And the Belgium example was extremely interesting to really show an example on the skills-based approach, and specifically for the most difficult group, which are needs and probably also lower skilled. As we heard from both presentations, the lower skilled anyway have higher kind of barriers to access training. So it's very useful to have these kind of tests and to then say, look, you should take training courses and language training courses. And I think the idea of having specific skills and not kind of qualifications test can really help. There could also be other domains, perhaps, or other digital skills proficiency levels and so, but looks for me as a very interesting approach for other countries and as well. So thank you. I stop here.
Thank you very much indeed. For highlighting those aspects of today's presentations. So we hope that that everybody here has found this morning's webinar informative and inspiring. I think we've covered a lot of content in an hour and a half. I want to thank once again all our speakers for joining us and sharing their knowledge and experience, and also all the participants as well for joining us and the questions. And I hope you feel that we were able to pick up on most of those. Others that were maybe comments, we will keep, and we will pass those on to colleagues in the secretariat and the mutual learning team, and we'll follow up if possible as appropriate. We're going to ask you before we leave, just as always, to provide feedback on today's webinar. It always helps us to keep improving. There's a QR code there on the screen. I think you can also see a link in the chat. So please do give us feedback. It helps us to keep improving, making sure that we're meeting the needs of our stakeholders. Encourage you again to download and read the report that we've been talking about, the PES Capacity Report 2025. There's a link there also in the chat. And as said, this recording will be made available on YouTube. The presentations will be shared, and there will be a short flash report made available and circulated in due course as well. Final thing, if you're not already part of the LinkedIn group of the PES Network, please do join the conversations there. It's a great place to find out the latest activities and the next events that you might want to take part in, but also to share knowledge, and you can also share what's happening in your countries, and we build that community of exchange and learning, which is so important across Europe. So thank you again for joining us this morning. Thanks for your time. We hope to see you at the next PES Network Mutual Learning event, and otherwise have a great rest of your day today. Goodbye.